Atlen gynnyll chi siawel dy cydw hon. Iach twy ag ei ag I wwchi'n chasati. Iach igen kiji. Taik handel kanas cydw siw. Iewe I dwy sag. Ashtydl twy. Ja ach a Johan. Zoom Kaasgéiy ti. Icht idee. Icht idee. You do a sag away. Ja internet. Ḥutlaakw away. Ye USA. Kana kawaning chak kwaswe icht. Kekha ani kach. Chakut ani kachoy chakuta icht. Has to tunda tani tin. Wooch in you has ʼadudli.átk. Achawe icht idee. Ye USA. We internet. Ye ke sa away. Ja yegi. Hayu katangi dat ye jig achtune. How to shahit. Klingit rinach. Achtu asagu. Kayi nigi. Gled kayu katangi team. Wana nisawe. Achtu asagu. Chakut ye dea ye jitune. Wan kanins achtu asagu. Kadenaya at gachtu sa achi. Klingit. Aka kagachtu ach. Kautu shiti. Dasawe butua ach. Wan kanins klingit achtu asagu yitu. Aina kaunik dasawe gled kakhinach koa. Dewe a dekone ye jagachtuneye. Kaachtu asagutsu yetunda tani dach. Yu chatank atchitli yechi. Achawe ya tag shu. Yewe kagachi ach wan ganins. Achtu asagu yik kwadeki. Ya adea ya yeji neye. Achawe chasaku yan yiwune. Yan yiwune achawe. Yik kwadek. Ya hayu chatangi tin. Ye awe chatsu. Ach I awla tu. Kijk de heen wusje chu I shewech wasatin. T'aawáḳ yudu sa kasa ani. Aya hawutien. Atkan ani aya. Huwech wasatin. Shayat eka. Eka kach wasatiense. Ye awaka. Ik kwadek. Chasaku. Shilti chatangi aya atka kwaslayech ach in. Ye awe. Ka adati tucht. Daso ye watan. Achwa Ye awe jakasakhantin katilla an khoa. Kaslach tuwa ushku yikawa degi. Tashkadegi at aya just kasagutin. Saguyi inyen kati yayaki. Gonna chishak 80 sa achi. What was I talking about? I just started challenging. I'm gonna give you guys a tip or a secret, make you mad. I don't do this with advanced Lincoln. I just talk to them and expect them to talk back. With you guys, I'm like, what do I say? And so I did this the other day. I did this just yesterday. It's like, okay, what did I say? And then we went through it. So you guys get special treatment.
The name for the internet is if they, we were talking about the internet.
Yeah, Kaasgéiy is the name of the internet, named by Ḥutlaakw Kenny Grant. And why did he call it that? I said it. Yeah.
Because it's magic, it knows everything.
Well, yeah, it is. There was a reason I gave. Was it?
Was it because the ich would speak to each other long distances without being present with each other in different communities?
Yeah, well, so you got one in one village, one in another, and they could still talk to each other. That's why he wanted to call it ʼadudli.átk. The medicine person's path or road. What else did I say?
In the middle, you talked about you all being ready for something.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned something about language, so ready for learning more language.
Yeah, y'all are ready, and that's why I'm gonna challenge you. I like that. It's like a dare or a challenge. And I shared like when I kind of knew this word, But I think the first time I had heard it in context, and I learning Tlingit and using it's really interesting because like study, and I think sometimes you feel like you're not getting anything, and then someone says something like, "Oh, I know what they said." So we were in a place called T'aawáḳ. Anybody know where that is? They call it Seatuck River. What about ʼadudli.átk? Anybody know what that is? ʼadudli.átk. Anybody know what ʼadudli is? Smokehouse. So if ʼadudli is smokehouse, what do you think ʼadudli.átk would be? Yes, which we could also call not quite fog. But so okay, so ʼadudli is a smokehouse. What do you do with a smokehouse? Smoke fish. So ʼadudli.
Smoking fish plant?
Yes, which we could also, if in English, would say we're going to go to
The store.
Jerry's. No, like ʼutzakáy. It's a lazy person's thing. We might go to fish camp. Fish camp, right? ʼadudli is fish camp. So, can I bring this up again? Oh, okay, I know. T'aawáḳ, ʼadudli. So, T'aawáḳ is the Seatuck River. It's in Yakutat. It's near Yakutat. So there's a whole bunch of fish camps. People just go out to these little houses and live there in the summer and work on fish. We're out there. We're doing a language gathering, and George Ramos walked up to me, and he had this. Sometimes you could just see, like when I started learning Hawaiian, people would walk up to me like, they talk to me in Hawaiian. That's what I want. That's what I want our language community to be. It'd be like, and that's the code. Not just challenge them. I said I'm going to challenge you, but it's not. I want you to be embarrassed or ashamed. I want you to be afraid. It's with love. It's with kindness. It's because I think you're ready. Right? That's why we do this. When I first heard that word, he walked up to me and I could see he was just like in Hawaii. Like they walk towards you and like they're going to talk to me in Hawaiian. I could feel it. And I looked at him and he was like he was going to talk to me in Tlingit. Like I could feel it. And and he said, ʼikwadek, I'm going to challenge you. So I was like, ah. And he said something really difficult in Tlingit. I had to think about it, and figure out what he was saying. And so that's the way we're going to be working this semester. Wan qanin zaktuasugu kitain ati sa akhi Tlingit Kaasgéiy Susie James. What was that? Wan qanin zaktuasugu ati sa akhi Tlingit Kaasgéiy Susie James. Sometimes. Zaktuasugu.
You want us to?
Ati sa akhi Tlingit.
All of us to listen.
Yes. To listen to Tlingit. Aka Kaasgéiy Susie James.
Kaasgéiy is to write, so Kaasgéiy would be something to do with writing.
Kaasgéiy.
Listen as we write as we listen.
I want you to try to write what you hear. Okay, so sometimes we'll just listen. This is how we're going to start doing stuff. Like I'll just put some thing on, be like, okay, write it down. Then I'll write it down. Right? Just good practice, right? What are you hearing? Getting word separation, all that kind of stuff, because they start to blend together sometimes, right? Ade, right? Like if you just hear that, it's sometimes like, is that one big thing? Like no, it's ade, ye, ji, yeah, it's 4 words, right? Wan qanin zaktuasugu Tlingit tu aka Kaasgéiy T'aawáḳ.
translate to English?
Yes, sometimes I want you to read Tlingit, translate it to English. What we're going to do right now. Oh, I think that's all I said. I challenge you all, do it with love, because I know you're ready. You're ready. We had 4 sentences to translate, and here they are. And no matter how this works out for you, it's okay. We're not, nothing is riding on it. If you don't get it right, the buildings will still be standing. You'll still be fine. It's okay. We're just sort of trying some stuff out here. And then we're going to start a process of like just continuing to walk through some stuff. But I'm going to give you another homework assignment over the weekend. Because now you've translated 4 sentences. So what do you think you're going to do next?
Right, for some.
You're going to write 4 sentences that have some sort of order, some sort of sequence.
Oh.
Right? They're from your own brain. And then you'll share them with us on Kaasgéiy Susie. I guess we'll figure out a process. Like, I don't really like Google Docs or Google Sheets, but we might try. But also, maybe you can just share your screen or something. But I want us to be able to see what you write as you read it to us so that we can also walk through it and just see if there's any recommended adjustments. And I think it helps us all learn. As we're learning Tlingit, we're also learning how to listen to the way each other speaks Tlingit, because everybody speaks it kind of different. There are some speakers out of Teslin, you know, like I've been listening to them for decades, but some other people might go listen to them and say, I have no idea what they're saying, because they're fast, they've got a different cadence, they've got different ways of pronouncing things. Like on Tuesday, I showed you folks Yan Huyn, and that, you know, someone was saying like, that speaker just got his own way of saying things. I was like, no, that's actually the correct way to say it, but nobody else says it that way because it's too kind of weird to go Hwyn, H-W, high tone E-I-N. Okay. Oh wait, somebody read this one, first one for us. Oops, let me fix it. Sheesh. Okay. Do one word at a time. You want to just give me the whole thing?
Nothing measures up to our language. And I have to admit, I've heard it so many times between you, Ida, and many. I just knew it as soon as I saw it. It's one of those phrases I can hear and I know what it means immediately. So I would maybe actually appreciate a breakdown because I just know. And I also, obs, like I know what that one word means. So it's like.
Oh, you've heard that one before?
Yeah, you know, just once in a while. You know, maybe every other day or something.
And what is Shekshani? Who is that?
Shiksani, March Jackson.
So cool. And then let me show you folks how this works.
Raven.
So what do you think, if I were to sort of gloss this out to its parts, what are the parts you think we have? It's 4.
Of Ishkitan,
Mm-hmm.
hit,
So sometimes when we sort of, this is called the gloss, right, where we sort of pull it apart and show what the pieces are there. So when we do that, we'll sometimes revert it back to what the vowels were doing before they contracted. Vowel contraction is really interesting. The most common thing is everything just goes short and low. That's really common. But then sometimes you have this other interesting thing that happens. And so basically, the ton part, when you're talking about clans, that's people of a house. And then you're going to have a house name right in front of it. So you do have ish, ka, hit, ton. And if you took that, what are those parts? What's ish?
Is that the salmon hole?
It's a fishing hole, yeah.
And then is ka on top of it? And the hit is house.
So as it gets a little, like things can get really long as you do this, right? Like if you have, well, I'll just show you another example. And so the strategy that we're generally using is you're going to match the hyphens. So until you hit a hyphen, you're still on this same thing. So if you have multiple words, you'll combine them with a period. It's just a way to sort of like, there's going to be a lot of stuff and you're going to start running out of room if you try to give everything space and stuff. And it's just sort of showing you like, sometimes you need multiple words to do this. You know, ish is a very short word in Tlingit. And then bonus round, ishk is a tide pool. So let's do one more and then we'll come back to this. What do you think? What are the parts you think we have here? If you were to write them out, you have three things.
Shtoowuḳáa.
We've got ton. If you have ton and there's a house, there's a clan name, there's going to be a house right in front of it. So we're going to have to get to hit. What is our third thing?
Wagani.
Right, and so sometimes the contractions that we get are a little bit, and so like what happens is kawagani hit ton becomes kagwantan. So a lot of times the hit just totally goes away. Ishka hit ton, ishki ton. And it's pretty common that some things just become a vowel. So like when we get into the creation of clan names, they sometimes have a few different rules of contract. They tend to just contract more. But some of them, here's another one. What do you think is in there?
4 parts. On, ton.
Gotta have the hit, right? And it usually disappears. There's one thing left.
Or what?
It is. You see a keyed in there though. There's a keyed in there. But it's the hit turning into the E sound, that doesn't happen usually. Anchak hitan means the house in the middle of town. This means the charred house. This is the house on top of the fishing hole, right? Okay. So the next thing that we could sort of do is, I really like when I learned Hawaiian, they used he'e, which we call naq. What is naq in English? Octopus. And what was really interesting, so we have dakasa and naq. Dakasa is a squid. Naq is an octopus. In Hawaiian, they also have, I forget the word for squid, but he'e is octopus. But when they speak English, they call them both squid, but they also know which one they're talking about, which is interesting. You like a squid? I'm not, right? So the way they use this octopus, they'll say naq. What is ʼaq'éiq?
Octopus finger.
Or we could say ʼaq. But what does an octopus have in English?
Tentacles.
Tentacles. When we talk about them, it's tentacles, right? When we talk, did I tell you that story?
It's one of my favorite jokes now.
Sign up for Shinga Oratory. We need people to be in that class. But we call them ʼaq. That's our word for tentacles, right? So ʼaq'éiq is, when we talk about that in terms of Tlingit grammar, we're saying like this is a thing, these things can move around a little bit, but they have to stay together. So I would say this sentence is a ʼaq'éiq qudzati. What do you think those three parts are?
Like fingers of the octopus.
So that means you might be, and some of them you can't move them, but like if you were to move them, you would have to keep them as a group. So I'm saying groups of words that have to stay together or else the meaning starts to get super jumbled. Because there are times where you can sort of move it around.
In this first sentence,
Mm-hmm.
Heshtasa was the first group, I would say. ʼayáx'kuge, the second, and then Ḥayuq'atangi.
Yep, so each of those is a thing, right? As far as word order, this is probably the best way to, I mean, you could say Ḥayuq'atangi, Heshtasa ʼayáx'kuge. But you couldn't, like the Heshtasa and ʼayáx'kuge would have to actually stay together, they'd have to move together. Or else it just gets Ḥayuq'atangi, it doesn't work if you separate.
So if they have to stay together, is it really two separate fingers, or is it like two like fingers that are like webbed?
Yeah, you could argue like, yeah, these are two, but they've grown together,
Yeah.
right? So it's like can't separate them. But as far as meaning goes, like those are also the other concept that we're sort of going for here is like if you those are what really create the meaning, right? So what is Heshtasa?
Nothing about
Nothing.
Right. So here you do have these three parts, right? So you've got these two, which are they're a matching pair to form a question or sometimes a statement, right? Dasa, what? Heshtasa, nothing. ʼadasa, whatever, right? Hesh and cha have these special uses when we're talking about these types of question particles. Heshtasa, nothing. Heshguchsa, nowhere. Heshasa, nobody. Heshwasa has its own special meaning, right? If it followed that same formula, it would expect it not anyhow, but it really means it's okay, right? So that one has its own special meaning. So nothing. What about ʼayáx'kuge?
Measures up to.
Yeah, so measures up. So the verb here is kuge, which means roughly to be so big. For something non-living to be, you're specifying the size of it, right? And Tlingit does like really interesting logical stuff like this, because you could say yage, it's big. Yekuge, it's this big. ʼayáx'kuge, same size as that, right? So you could say ya, let's see, what could you say? Well, I guess we hit yáx'kuge ya, whatever. I don't know what could be the same size of a house, but you know. And so ʼayáx'kuge on its own would be the same, you know, so ʼayáx means like it, right? So you could say ʼayáx'shege, they're the same height as me, right? You could say something like that if you wanted to. But in this case, this is something that's really interesting, I think. If you say heshtasa, which is nothing, it starts with hesh, and that ends up pushing the verb negative. Because you could say hesh ʼayáx'kuge, it's not the same size. Yéil Ţaawáḳ. And I first heard this one because what does this translate to? Ausaku.
They know. They know it.
They know it. And what does this translate to?
They don't know it.
And you will learn why that changed. You should not be saying Yéil Ausaku. You should be saying Yéil Ţaawáḳ. And you will get there, right? For now, look it up. Look it up, look it up, look it up. Or ask if you can't find it. And then you will be learning why and how to predict what all of those different parts are going to be. So then if you said, I did hear a speaker say this, and I'm not saying this about anybody in particular.
They don't know nothing. Because you told us last semester. So.
Yeah, and it's up to you if you want to say they don't know anything, they don't know nothing, they know nothing. I guess I would say as far as the Tlingit grammar goes, I would probably say they don't know anything. And here's another example. You say, what does that one say?
They love themselves.
Quite.
They love me.
I'm not the one being loved.
I love him, her.
I love them. I don't love them.
I don't love anything.
Just, and so this was a bonus one that I got from Kaasgéiy, because we're going to do this exercise. It's not very far away, where we're going to say, I'm going to challenge you again. ʻadudli.átk. They're going to have this big thing that in English says, I love them. I love you. I love y'all. I love them all. You love them. You love them all. You love me. You love us. They love me. They love us. They love you. They love you. It's going to go through every possible combination, except for we're not going to do loving the self. We'll just stick with So we did all of those, and I would just say it in English, and he would say it, and I would write. And we're recording it, but I would also write it down. We got to the negatives, and I said, I don't love you. And his wife would always sit in the next room. She was so funny. And she'd go, Ishan! She would just listen to what we were doing when we were working. It was very fun. Okay. So, nothing measures up to our language. So nothing same size, in a negative form, right? Our language. This comes from a verb. Okay. Number 2.
Renee, I have a question. So I've been wondering how to write a comparative in Tlingit, and is Kaasgéiy a comparative verb?
It is. So it's saying, but you're specifying the size, right? So the way that this works, let's see, how am I going to do this? I know how I'm going to do this. Hold on. Okay. Now you guys get to look into the future at what advanced Tlingit students look at on a regular basis. Don't worry about vowel deletion in the classifier, though. We're actually going to jump up quite a bit. And, hey, do the thing I want you to do. Okay. So these are the main parts of a Tlingit verb. There's more than this, but this is what you really need to understand in order to speak Tlingit. And don't need to be a linguist. You don't have to have a degree in calculus to speak Tlingit. You do have to understand how this stuff works. There's a bunch of little parts. They usually have meaning or grammar function, and they smush together in predictable ways, but sometimes a little bit complex ways. There's the preverb, it's a word that comes before the verb, and it could talk about negativity, motion. It could be an adverb type of thing. There's an object, which is the one who's affected by the verb. The verb happens to them. There's a subject, that's who does the verb. There's a classifier. It usually says like, did it happen or not? Or it's putting the action into some sort of category. The stem is what the vowel is. Sometimes there's a suffix, but they're actually pretty rare. Sometimes there's a postverb, and they're even more rare than a suffix. Conjugation is how we move the verb, say like now to future to past, except Tlingit doesn't conjugate for time. So it's more like, let's say whether or not it happened. Let's say whether or not it will happen. Let's say whether it's happening right now. Right? So whenever you do any sort of that stuff, you're going to start messing around with these gray ones right here. That leaves these pink ones, the thematic. These are basically nouns that you can put onto a verb. And some of them are much more common than others. So when we look at these, and this is not all of them, there's a lot more than this, but from my perspective, these are the most common ones. So the way I like to teach Tlingit is I'll say, here's all the most common stuff. You're going to find more stuff than this, but if you can get this, you can converse and you can understand an awful lot. So you got k, ka, j, tu, sa, sh, da, ka, sha, sh, ka, ya, and ka. So one thing is there are 3 ka in there. And there are different, and I don't think I've seen it, but I think theoretically you could have all 3 of them in a verb. Well, actually,
Verb? Like ka.
I think you can only have 2.
Ka?
Yeah, you can have kaka.
Ka.
Kakaushatit. It's rolling in the swells.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Kakataqa. Kakataqa. Anybody want to guess what that is? If you're a jeweler, you might use them. If you're an electrician, you might use them.
Wires?
Yes.
Ah. That was a complete guess.
And it's called kakataqa because you have 2 planes that come and bite together. Tlingit's always thinking of stuff like this.
Let's bite.
Talk. Mm-hmm. With the front teeth. Okay. Any of these that you think you might recognize? K, ka, j, tu, sa, sh, da, ka, sh, a.
Nose.
So, yeah, we got nose. Hand.
Mouth.
Mouth.
Voice?
Sa, voice or
Base of throat.
base of the throat.
Like when you're cutting someone in their throat.
Yeah, the verb to strangle something has sa on the front of it. Makes sense. That's where you're going to do that.
Just is the end of or the, oh, sorry.
Yeah, yes, the end. Sh. Oh, we got almost all of them.
Inside to.
Inside. T'aawáḳ. You guys are so smart.
Is one of them round?
One of these is round. I think. Is that one? I don't know. I'm going to say it's that one. Spherical or round.
Da about.
Da is about or around. Don't worry about we'll do that one some other day.
Head.
Sha is head. Yep. I don't think I have that one on my list. Or maybe it's further down. So we do have, there's ka, and ka in terms of.
But what's ku?
Oh, what? Okay, what is ku?
It's an aerial.
It's aerial. right? It refers to a given area.
Okay.
And ʼk' is really interesting.
More
So when you
interesting
put it onto a verb, it's usually going to refer to either the weather, or it's just going to say there's something about a given space, like ʼkudzati. It is in a space, I guess. So
Like
it exists. Huh?
than, like kukaksti.
Yeah, ʼkudzati, like that.
No, kukaksti.
ʼḲuqaqasti, right, which is the hortative form of ʼkudzati. And then if you have the noun form, you have ʼkusti, life, right? So, but okay, where am I going to find this one? Start of semesters are always so fun. It's just like,
I don't think I got it on this one. I don't think this was really sad.
who distracted the teacher?
I
Okay,
think he distracted himself.
okay.
He's pretty good.
But what does ʼk' mean? And I think when we look at these, we get a little bit of a better example. So ʼk' means a bunch of different things. If I said ʼk' as a noun, it means a small bay, like on the ocean. We'd call like a bight or a cove, like T'aawáḳ, King Salmon Cove. But there's these suffixes, right? What does the suffix nach mean? We did this a couple months ago. So through or along. What about dach? From. Day. Towards. Arrived at. So if you say ʼkunach through ʼk', it means really. I don't know why. But if you say ʼkudach or ʼkutch from ʼk', it means too much. If you say ʼkudei towards ʼk', it means to oblivion. And if you say ʼkut arrived at ʼk', it means lost. So that means that suggests to me that this little thing ʼk' is very important in Tlingit. But then sometimes it's just like, sometimes it's just there. Kaasgéiy Susie. I don't understand it. And ʼk' is in there, right? Okay. Back to the question I was answering 47 minutes ago. You do have a comparative prefix here. But whenever you have it, you will usually have this little thing, which we call the irialis. Okay, so the irialis is a conjugation prefix. What it means is that there's some separation from reality here. So it will be in all negative forms of the verb. It will be in all future forms of the verb. And it should be in all comparative forms of the verb. So that's why when you're to say something like Yéil Ḳutlaakw, it's that big. Or you'd say Yéil Ḳutlaakw, it's this small, a living thing. The reason why this is long here is because you do have ka and in there. And you also have them right here. So it kind of depends, because then there's yach, which is to say it's like something. Uwaya would mean it resembles something, like it looks like something. So if you talk about comparing things in Tlingit, and Tlingit loves to use metaphorical language, then there's different ways to go about it. So it kind of depends if you're literally comparing these things. Like say, this cup is heavier than this cup. Then you would have ku in there, and you have kudash, right? That's a good question, which I guess, I'll put this up. The whole theme of this week is like apparently more than you needed to know, but it's always fun to do that stuff. So, Yisikuke adu sawe. Shtoowuḳáa. Shtoowuḳáa. T'aawáḳ wu awe. Tlak on dach. Kaagwantan. Ach ish has. Kaagwantan ka wu awe. Du shatqa ashukach adi. Atlein at awe we at u. Gwash awa u. Gwash awa tau. Aga we museum a yide awe ye ausene. Atlein a. Pennsylvania a ye wutian. Ka a ye yati a yidet. Tle kach inach yisikuke desai. Du ish haso e kanach tidi. Shtoowuḳáa. Shtoowuḳáa. Louis. ETA. Shotridge. So Louis Shotridge is a complex person in Tlingit history, I think. So he was Kaagwantan. He's from Ḳutlaakw. His wife was Tlukach Adi. Her name was Florence Dennis. And she's my mother's father's sister. And he purchased a lot of things from Tlingit people, and maybe took a lot of things from Tlingit people and put them in the Pennsylvania Museum. There's a lot of stuff that's there today. And I think the most complicated concept for me for Louis Shotridge is when he said, I got this sea lion helmet from the Kaagwantan, who are apparently not strong anymore because I just walked out of their house with it. I think that, I'm paraphrasing, and I think that's what he said. And he's Kaagwantan.
Oh.
So I was just thinking like, that is complicated. But a lot of these things we still have, but they are at a museum. So it's complex. But he was also a wonderful scholar of the Tlingit language. So there's a set of these cards that Kuch, David Strong, and I were working on. And they have a bunch of these, some of them are comparative things. But so it says, like, he just made these cards and it says, the weight, heavy, heavier, heaviest, too heavy, light, heavy boards, right? And so heavier boards, light. It's really interesting the way he sort of wrote this stuff. And once you figure out how he wrote Tlingit, which is different than we write it today, I'll show you what one of these cards looks like. So we'll just go look for this card here that talks about Kudashi and Yedesh, Yedeshli'ah, Tlach Yedeshli'ah, Kudach Yedesh, and Kudas. And so, but he wrote Tlingit very accurately. Let me see if I can find this card. And then we'll go back to our translation. So there. So here is how he wrote Tlingit. Right. So one, it's in cursive. Two, so the T with the underline is a D. The A with this kind of mark up here, I don't know what to call it. Looks like an apostrophe almost, is signifying a long vowel. The long line over the top is also signifying, or I think it's signifying long high, and then this long line here is signifying long low. So once you sort of figure out, and then a capital L is a TL, and then this X is, often he's marking it, but then it should have an underline, like it would today have an underline. So this was a fun project, so I'll put a PDF of it up just so you folks have it and can look at it. They're pretty advanced concepts, but there's really wild things like a shallow bucket and a deep bucket. It's wild stuff because shallow water and deep water and shallow snow and deep snow are different than a bucket. Okay, that's all more than anybody needed to know.
Does the inland orthography still use the part Is Bard A?
They use a bard L.
Yeah, I know they use the Bard L, but I've seen some. I know names are names, and people keep the orthography when they learn them. But is there any? Does the coastal orthography use the line above A anymore?
So, well, that's a good question. So, like, here's like if you just pick the A vowel, here's what they would look like. And I try not to say coastal and inland. I try to say T'aawáḳ and Lear.
Lear is what's the
And some people would be mad at me for saying that, but they know where to find me. And but the reason I say that is because coastal and inland is too easily, because there are different cultures, right? And then you can also say United States and Canadian, and then there's different nations. And then you can also say, yeah, and so it's too easy to sort of make the orthography part of an identity when really it was created and developed by non-Tlingit peoples, right? And so if we attach names to it, then sometimes it gets a little easier to sort of shift towards one or the other. But it's also, it's a political thing and it is an identity thing. But no, you don't really have, like those are the vowels. So you have instead, you have a downward mark, which means long and low, and you have this little circumflex or the hat thing, which means long and high. And then if dealing with any of the underlines is you'd go to a GH, right? So it'd have an H after it. But you will see, and then I guess they also do use the bard L. So we use an L, and then they would use the bard L.
I've seen that frequently.
But you will see, coming back to,
Seen people mix the Bard L with the T'aawáḳ orthography.
you'll get the letter A with a slash through it.
Okay, I've never seen that.
And so, I don't know if you want to know this now,
Yeah.
but sometimes a classifier will delete the letter A from the, like, for example, we saw one today. We didn't even see it. We didn't even know we saw it.
So that's not really part of the orthography. It gets deleted. It's kind of like the little square root, non-square root symbol. Like it's used to type out glossing.
Yeah. So like if we said ʼadudli.átk, we have,
Actually the word.
well, so here's all the parts that you have in here. Ya, sa, ku. So this has sa. This has there's a vowel in the classifier. But what happens is if there's certain things that touch this, that come before it, that vowel gets scared and runs away. If a perfective marker or an irialis come right before a classifier with an A vowel, other than duh is like, I don't drop vowels, I'm duh. The rest, sa, sha, and sha will. Again, this will make, like, give it a year. And you'd be like, yeah, vowel deletion in the classifier, of course that happens. I can predict it. Okay. Sentence number 2.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, but I cannot guarantee a quick answer.
Can I derail you again? I think this will be quick. I've been wondering, because you mentioned something on Tuesday about, classifiers and state verbs, and I'm having trouble wrapping my head around patterns and where to look for them. And my question is it worthwhile at the stage we're at? Would you recommend, if there are enough variants by the verb type, like action verb, motion verb, state verb, should we be looking at groups of one type of verb to look for patterns? And if so, is there any document out there that organizes them by the type of verb? And if not, I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, if it's not worthwhile, if it wouldn't be helpful to where we're at. I mean, I don't know. I'm just wondering, is it, yeah, so could we look at motion verbs and pick up on patterns? and
Okay.
Changes. Is that a possibility? I mean,
Yeah, that's a great question.
This is good.
yeah, okay.
Alright.
This will take us to the break. So I can do it fairly quickly though. So in-house ʼadudli.átk, which we will start moving through in a more decided fashion, right? If we go to, I gotta test myself. Where do I have this? Okay.
Just chapters.
Once we start getting into the verb, let's see. Where do we do verb types? Okay. So when we get to, maybe this is under, where do I talk about verb types? Okay. Well, I guess the big thing with verb types, okay. So one is you have an act verb for someone to do something, right? So an act verb is going to have an imperfective, it's going to have a perfective, it'll have usually command, prohibitive, like it has most of the verb modes. When you have an event verb, the biggest difference between an act verb and an event verb is there should be no imperfective. Right? There's no moment where it's happening. It's either hasn't happened or happened. So that's the big thing with event verbs, is they tend to just sort of, they have this instantaneous sort of time when they happen. With a state verb, they're saying like to be a certain way, and the reason why those ones are different is because if it is that way, then it must be plus I in the imperfective. So the act and the state verb and the position are the only ones with an imperfective, which means we're talking about it being that way right now or happening right now. So an act verb is minus I, a state verb is plus I, and a position verb is minus I. Right? And the position verb is interesting because there's usually only an imperfective and a negative imperfective. Standing, not standing. If you want to say stood, will stand, it actually switches to a different verb. So then we did act, state, position, and event. The most complicated verb, I think, is the motion verb. The reason why the motion verb is the most complicated is because we've probably mentioned in here every verb has a conjugation type. Zero, na, ga, or qa, right? And when you look it up, you look up a verb, it's going to say that. The big difference with a motion verb is a motion verb can have any one of those four. It could be a zero, it could be a na, it could be a ga, it could be a qa. And it will be determined by the type of motion. For example, you could say we de nagu, go over there. You could say nekgu, come inside. The first one's na, the second one's zero. You could say yagagu, walk, or you could say adegagu, go up there. And you could also say adeqagu, go down there. So then it's going upwards and downwards. So motion verbs can take on any one of those four. It'll be determined by the preverb. So what comes right before the motion will tell you what the conjugation type is going to be. That's why, but I think once you learn that, then you'll learn, okay, this is an event verb, so there's no imperfective. Oh, this is an act verb, so there is an imperfective. Oh, this is a state verb, so it's got to be plus I in the imperfective. Then you'll sort of learn those general patterns. It's a positional verb, like you only really say is or isn't at that place, right? Or, yeah, position there this way. Then the motion verbs are the most complicated, and they're also complicated because they tend to do something really different once you pluralize them, right? So you say ʼadewugud, ʼadehaswu'at. So either the root will change or it'll add something. ʼadewux'ak, it swam or they swam underwater over towards there. ʼadehaskauduwux'ak, they swam over there. I'll find where that is, where it talks about that. I know it's in House in I think once you start learning verbs, like the verb type is sort of like, that's just part of the verb. For me, being able to speak Tlingit kind of always comes down to the verb modes. Like, can you master how to put the perfective together? The negative perfective, the future, the negative future. Those are probably the most important four to be able to speak. Because you're going to tell stories, and you're going to talk about things that are going to happen. And I think those are the easiest ones to predict. The future is the easiest to predict. But the perfective is probably the most important to predict because a lot of what we communicate is stuff that happened. I got to tell you what happened. I got to tell you, but you guys know all my stories. I tried to tell you a story today. You guys already know.
How will we learn to retell them ourselves when you give us permission if you don't repeat them to us?
Yeah.
Traditional.
There you go. Somebody tell me the beaver joke.
See?
Wasa Yanakich Katie.
What's that?
Damn.
Yes! Now you guys have earned your break. That's earning the break right there. That's earning it. Let me pause it and then I'll tell you something real quick. Okay.
I'm like, hey, how's it going? Well, this time it's been an
Overnight friendship.
Oh, yeah, we did that once, like that you bake or something.
And you just leave it in the oven overnight too.
Okay.
So
T'aawáḳ.
refrigeration.
Okay,
It's modern.
we gotta get our second sentence. Can somebody read this one? And then I don't think you guys have the answer. Ooh, okay.
Oh, nice.
I
Why don't
choose
you
shark
read it and
face
tell us?
Hold on. I choose you, Pikachu, to read it. I was the last reader.
Popcorn eating.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gotta make sure. No, I don't know this one.
Okay. Can I get anybody want to read?
As in the one underneath.
I'll
Oh.
read it.
Okay.
Ya Kaasgéiy Susie James T'aawáḳ Aya T'aawáḳ Yéil Ḳutlaakw.
Sheesh. Oh, that should say.
I didn't expect this to be number two. This is number two. Yeah, I was like, why doesn't it?
I think I went over to that side. I don't know. I forgot. Wait, Yéil ख़utlaakw an Tlínéidí Chasatí one Qanín's Chua an Qaketan you had to Saknuch. That's what he said. He said we are Tlínéidí, but sometimes people always call us an Qaketan. And who's T'aawáḳ? Yes. Okay, ya Kaasgéiy Waya hastu itik akiti khaya hasati uhan ya yaki.
People's nieces and nephews. It looks like it. And I got people's remains.
Yeah, and uaya could also be it is as if. Usually like uaya on its own does mean it resembles it. So you could say like chich uaya, it looks like a porpoise. Or we could say whatever you want. It looks like something, right? But when you say ʼch'u'ya, that would always be it's as if. But in this case, you could say it resembles it. That works fine. So this one is, so I guess if I were to break this into the pieces, I would say that has to stay together. Because this is one whole thing up to here, and then this suffix is tied to this verb.
Their place.
Yeah, so we get to, there's a big word in here. We talked about this word very much, ʼit.
Like a place made for something.
It's more like ya'ak. Ya'ak would be a place made or reserved for something.
Oh.
But it's a similar concept, but maybe going in a different direction.
Remains.
Like remains or whatever.
Yeah, the remains, what's left when it's gone, right? So ʼit. So for example, what is khus?
What was it?
Khus.
Close.
Yes. So khus ʼit.
Footprint.
Footprint. What is gun? Low tone.
Firewood.
Yeah, but gun, you usually don't hear gun on its own, but it's like a fire,
Fireplace.
like a campfire or a fire. Gun ʼit.
Okay. Ash coal.
Not quite.
Scorches.
Yes, like the scorched earth where the fire was. ʼatcha.
Food.
ʼatcha ʼit.
Crumbs.
Yes. Cheeto ʼit. Someone's probably got it right now.
What would the leftovers then be that you save in a ceramic, in a container and put in your fridge?
Inwu, to get its own name. It usually means like, and inwu works for leftovers, but the word usually specifically sometimes can refer to food you take home from a ku'i.
So Cheeto. Did you make that possessive?
The ite,
Yeah.
that's a Cheeto ite would be like the orange stuff on your
Yeah,
hands.
that's what I was asking. And you wouldn't make either of those relational. You'd just do
No, so like ite is a relational noun,
Okay, or
right? And so it doesn't get any suffix or anything like that. You could just, and so you could also say, like let's say Kaasgéiy was teaching this class or Ida was teaching this class. And I came here as a substitute teacher for Ida. I could say Ida ite Ḥanuk. I'm sitting in the place of Ida, right? So people can also have their remains, right? And it's not like human remains. It's just like the aftermath. It's more of a concept than like a physical thing, right? So you'd say hastu ite, something in their remains. And what is kaasgéiy?
I thought the beginning might be math,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't find anything else.
It is, it's made up of this. And then you end up with point on thing, relational. Which is a seed. S-E-E-D. In there remains seed. Could be plural. Oh, we gotta go back to the. And then you get ha-sati.
We are.
We are. Right, and whatever we are, we look for this suffix to find out what it says it is. It's one of these things now. That classifier shift from yati to siti means we're talking about it being one of these types of things. Uhan yayagi. Us all. Today. Now we gotta tuch it into English. We're gonna massage it into English, right? Because that's kind of going line for line, how it all lines up, how it all translates.
I'm laughing because once I did this in front of Kaasgéiy and she's like, this doesn't make sense. Don't do it like this. I was like, I promise I'm going to put it into real English. She was like, don't let me see it. And I went and sat elsewhere. I was trying to reply to one of your messages. First I have to translate one of yours.
A person's niece, nephew. It is as if or I guess you'd say this.
We are what remains of them?
It's as if we are the seeds in their remains today. So this ties to a much larger concept. So there's this speech. We'll watch it at some point. I'll put the subtitles on it. Well, it's not a speech. It's a conversation between Wooch and Kaasgéiy, recorded by Shtoowuḥáa. And they're going back and forth. And then at some point later in the recording, Kaasgéiy his launches into outer space with just amazing Tlingit concepts. And at one point he's talking about the way that people would teach. And when we talk about Kaasgéiy, it's a very important concept in Tlingit. Like, go back pre-contact, it was always up to you to raise Kaasgéiy. Like, within your clan, you were always, always, always teaching them, raising them, guiding them, so that they didn't end up doing stuff the wrong way. And so he's talking about the way that an uncle would teach a nephew or an auntie would teach a niece. And then he was saying, like, the way that they did it, it's as if we're the seeds in their remains. And it's sort of like we are the seeds in the remains of our ancestors, or we are the seeds in the remains of this way this life was being sort of the way it went a long time ago. And so Shtoowuḥáa, it's a phrase that is used in Tlingit to say, like, we're the seeds in the remains of our ancestors. It's a big concept. Sentence number 3. Somebody want to read it? Somebody read it. I don't care if you want to or not.
Atchagasti oa du yadi planu yachgawa wuti wa Yéil Ḳutlaakw yasligtani alflayachi yes.
So, guess that's gotta be a thing. That's gotta be a thing. That's gotta be a thing. Okay, nach. Okay, so what do we got? Any of the parts that y'all recognize?
I think I have a translation for that one.
Oh yeah?
After that, when her child was born, Raven
was like a fortress, I guess as Raven rearranged the world.
Mhm.
I like listening to this one.
Okay, so we're doing this a little bit different, like sort of line by line, right? A little bit faster. ʼadudli.átk. So this ʼadudli is ʼkudzati, is how we usually see this verb, or ʼkudzati. This is the same verb as ʼqaqasti, right? So we just see how that verb keeps changing. You will start to recognize that. No matter how you see that verb, you'll say, oh, that's the ʼkudzati verb. I know it because this is the minus I form of the z classifier. Like you will recognize that stuff. ʼatk is a contraction of ʼadach. Awedu yeti. It's her child because this is a sentence about Raven's mother. Ḳe is then. Nu is a fortress. Yach is like. Giwe means I guess. Like it's not quite a question, but it's sort of saying, like for example, if you're saying Shatachich, you do a sock, do ish. Louis Shotridge's father, maybe his name was Shatachich, and maybe it's Shatachich, which is where Shotridge comes from. It means not clubbed on the head. In this case, giwe, and then wuti is the perfective form of yati, to be, was being, or became. Yéil Ḳutlaakw. And Ḳutlaakw, like, Ḳutlaakw is one of the words that you'll have to just look at the context to figure out how to translate it. Because sometimes you just don't even have to say anything. Because sometimes it's just saying, calling attention to who we're talking about. Yéil Ḳutlaakw. We're talking about Raven, right? So you could say though sometimes. Ani, the world. Yechi, Yéil. So Yech is the verb for they made it. Like Nadab Yech, they made a table. There is a little suffix on here. Remember we learned the rules of the relational suffix? It's going to be an I, but sometimes it's a U. The tone is opposite of the tone before it, right? That kind of stuff. This follows all of those same rules, except it's always low. You throw it on a verb to make that verb into an adjective. Yak'e, it's good. Yak'e Yéil, good raven. Kash'ushke, bad. Kash'ushke douche, bad cat. Evil cat, right? And so in this case, Shingetane Aushyechi Yéil, the raven who made the world. It's Kaasgéiy. English name?
Susie James.
Yeah, well. Oh, we gotta listen to Susie James
We
this
have to
semester.
listen to this one. It's like 2 minutes and it's repeated 5 times.
Okay, we'll do it.
It's so good.
Really quick, Chukanshaw, I believe, is that the like feminine version of Chukanadi, or
Yes. And not every clan does that, but some of them specifically do. So Chukanshaw is very common for females of the Chukanadi clan. And you'll also hear Dak'eoshaw, Shukachshaw. And then some of them, they have a whole different, because sometimes, and some of, like I haven't really heard one from, like you have Yunwashaw, but that's a totally different group of the Kagwantan that came over from T'aawáḳ.
The no. all Kapontan Shah or Yanwa Shah.
That is correct.
As a Yanwa Shah. It came up in the MOOC, and I think it's really important to discern that.
Yeah, well. Okay. Last one, then we'll listen to Susie James. So we'll read it.
Chas, sorry, Chas T'aawáḳ Kaasgéiy Yéil Ňáu.
Cheers.
Missing a word. Okay, gonna cheese. What is this one?
Just kindness and love. In your heart.
Words to live by. Don't cause harm to anybody. Okay.
What's the function of na'u?
So na'u is the command form. So you could say ye awa'u. They wore it, or they used it, or they put it somewhere. Could mean any one of those three things. So then you get ye na'u would be, could mean put it on, could mean use it, could mean put it over there. So when you say ʼadudli.átk, it sounds like you're saying just put it on me, or just set me there. Just depends. Okay. So, you all, Yuhan, you all have access to this book now. It's incomplete. I think it should be called Yéil. That's how a lot of the stories start. What does that mean? Yéil. Raven is walking along the beach. Right? That's how a lot of the stories start. Right? The Raven stories. This is divided into some different sections. So what I would call Yéil Ḵutlaakw. I think Yéil Ḵutlaakw means I'm going to tell you the Raven stories in the order that I think they should be told. Raven and his uncle, Raven makes the world, Raven and fire, Raven and water, Raven in the salmon box, right? There's like a specific order that you tell them in. And for some of these speakers, they told them all at once. You can listen to the Susie James one. It's like an hour and a half long or something.
I didn't get that.
And she tells like 14 of them in a row.
So for like any other speaker, that'd probably be like 6 hours.
Yeah. And then you have Yéil Ţaawáḳ, which means it's a single Raven story. Like, let me tell you this Raven and ʼadudli.átk. Let me tell you about Raven and blueberries, right? Yeah. And then you got stories in English. And then there's biographies of some of the storytellers. So under the Yéil Ḳutlaakw, we have Kaasgéiy Susie James. And she starts out with Yéil Ḳutlaakw. So this is how Raven was born. This is the work of Kaasgéiy Nora Marks Dowenhauer, and then it was edited by Kaasgéiy Susie James. Let me find the audio. I'll put the audio up for you folks too.
It's on the Google Drive.
What's that?
It's on the Google Drive.
These?
I found the.
Well, it probably is somewhere.
The whale one.
Oh yeah? Oh yeah, no, they're all on
They're
there.
hidden, yeah.
They are on there. I can't remember how I put them on there though.
Under Downtown.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, but you have to first
click on the right link and sync it and then navigate to, or you can open up the Google Drive and then hit search.
The secret map of tlingitlanguage.com.
Off the menu.
Exactly. Is it monster fries or whatever you're supposed to get from animal fries? I think that's what it is. Okay. Let me hide the sidebar. Okay. Here we go.
Yéil Ḳutlaakw T'aawáḳ أقول تعطي على كوتك تقول كوتي وتي وسقاولاق شكقيلها لاق شكقيلها تجيبك وسكين كنا تشاوك تقول كيت وتي تخك شاخو وسقيك تي تقا كيتيت تي شو تعالوا تي حيساوخج شلي الواد تلاق تو تقا نايا دوناق تعطي توخج تينا وعشان هيك وتهيتي توين أكو كان نستا وناق كان هتلتاي هو قد كان نستا لا توابشك كوي عشان هيك وناق وتهيتي أو تدو أخوستان تقول شكاقي هناق ليو سقا كيش كان نالين كشاوك اختا كيوت أتان قوتو أتكوشك قاعدك شول سخوتك أقاوه تلاتو نفسينية أيش كان توانا قد تكيلك أو تيه وسقاوه نه شقيس كنا يكتا شقيس كنا يكتا أقاوه تتاقو كنا يكاوه تاوه كيس أو تحتاجو جاتا نفسكيتي تتاقو أو ناسي تخوا خنتو وكتوه نقو كتوه تتاقو أو تتسقسي وشو ستيق نه كيس تتليفسيني كتا يوسقا تحتاجو تقصني ياخذ الكريوت وقيس تتاقو يتتاخن أو تقوى قاوتوج الجنس كنجيتا كيسي أتقوز تقاوتوج واسيتون أو تعاوت أكو كاوت أكو إنا وشو نعتاق كاوت سلت وقاو تتاخن تا كن يكو كوكيك أكي شقبتليت أتنقت آني هاكو يوزقاتك هاكو بتوقع كنت كوكو خاوة كيسا وخوخ أدوش قتلي تسنقت أنا يقاوك توتاقو يقاوك توكو توتاقو يخوة توتاقو وقاوك توكو تسنقت أنا كتكو خلاتيز تلواسيك قلنا يشو السقا أو السقا تسنقت أنا كتكو خلاتيز تلواسيك قلنا أقاوة تساقا خوتك قدن أسنقتين ها كوكتا شقيس قنوي كتتا شاكا قاتت كوكويا قنوي كتا أقاوت قنوي كاوتا وقيس كيسي قد أعني وياشن نكت لا تلوك تكيت يهوك أوي ويس واسوشكي كوخوانوك أواني سوي خاطر قتاقين يدهوتتان خاطر قتاقين لو تقيني أوكن داتشون كلي خاطر تودقن زيادة وطلع تودق يووني وخاطر تودق جو يكتبوا لك فوق شاوت لتلي قدانك يوكا يكسيني كواسك شواسك شيداتي قلت لي أنسين كياكو أخدي جا قلت لك كونسك شاء وخي ياكو ها تتوقع يا وساته
Yeah. That's the storytelling mountaintop right there. It's just amazing. So much good stuff in there. It's so fast. And not that fast is better, but it was just amazing to work on this stuff. And you know, a lot of this stuff, this one was, it was done. Like Nora had already done it. We just went through and did a little bit of fine tuning and edits. There's a couple of them though where they hadn't been written yet, and so we had to write the tlingit and translate it. And some of it was just really incredible, like just incredible, like some stuff. And so there's a couple things, I guess, when you listen to her outside of thinking of how fast she talks sometimes. She does talk very fast, probably the fastest tlingit talker of all time. But there's like two things that I would notice that most speakers don't really do, especially nowadays. What are those two things? I'm thinking of sounds specifically.
She's got a beautiful cadence.
Yeah.
a beautiful cadence. You can hear the high tones, but it's almost like there's like she's got high tones, low tones, and like mid tones, like how in English female speakers have more of a range in their voice, I would say. I can hear that in her in a way that I often say that T'aawáḳ is really musical. She sounds so musical when she speaks.
Yeah, you get lots of, and then like when she switches to a whisper, that's always really fun. Like, you know.
A lot of inflection in her voice while still hearing the high tones without changing it into questions.
There's one sound that she makes that I'd say almost no other speaker makes. And then there's another sound that she makes that very few current speakers make.
The nasal one.
The nasal one. And when we go back, let's go back to
Is
the,
there an underlined N?
there is an underline
Is
N.
that one of those sounds?
And that is one of those sounds.
Nice catch, I didn't see that.
Oh, there it was down on the page below.
So when she says this line, if you were to listen to that line on its own, it would sound like this. Kaasgéiy Susie. So she regularly makes a voiced L sound in the spot where the N sound would be. And achla do ish. My great-grandfather did this exact same thing. So there's a place in Shtoowuḳáa land called Tan'ani, fish jumping village. And when he was talking about it on a recording, he said, Ta'aვალ. And Nora was recording him, and she said, Tan'ani again? He says, Ta'aვალ. So he did it twice. And his English name was Bert Dennis. And when they recorded him, and he first met Richard T'aawáḳ, he said, I'm Bud Dellis. And that's how he said his name. And then he said to Richard T'aawáḳ, tell me about model skills. And then they saw Richard T'aawáḳ's face get all twisted up. He's like, model skills. Then his wife leans over and says, marten skins. He wants to know what you know about marten skins, you know. And so that just makes it extra interesting. The next, I do remember working on this, and so maybe next week just for fun, just like, I think this semester I'd like to have lots of moments where we're just listening to Tlingit, and we've got it to read here, and I'll post it, and you guys could review it. But it just gives us something like more and more and more whole language opportunities. And I'm going to have you folks writing more sentences, doing more stuff on your own, and then getting into deeper sort of language moments. Because I do remember when we did this one, I think a lot of it, we translated a lot of this stuff. Because I remember specifically getting to this point where is it? It says, right here. So it says, ʼadudli', my partner, which is fun because that's an English phrase that's being Tlingitized and then getting this voiced L inserted as well. And then she says, haku, hakuk, haku, kaku. And we're like, what? And so, and the haguk we certainly heard. Kagu was wild. And so I said, okay, haguk. And I looked at it, I was working with Marge and George. I said, how would you translate that? And Shikshani said, come here, cutie. And so it was very, very fun to work on that.
So is it unique to the work that this group did to choose to have the voice cell as an underline N, or is that accepted part of the Donenhauer orthography?
This was James Crippen's idea, because he said it's clearly a sound substitution. So then we just said, let's put an underline on the N to say like most speakers would have an N there, but she's doing something different. Because you can't put an L there or else people would say, ʼadudli.átk, right? ʼadudli.átk. And so it was a decision that we made there. And there's only 2 speakers that we know of that do that. But then when we started, there's a word that people use in Tesla, and there's a type of fish that they call daleyi. And so when we write daleyi, I'm suggesting to write an underline N for that, which some people don't like, but they know where I'm at, they can find me. So there's this really neat thing which is called, I don't really like the name of it because it's called a potential attributive, which if I said that, you would have no idea what that really means, right? But it really, if you say it in terms of what does this verb mode do, it says cannot do it. So you could say, there's no way you can help me. And Raven loves to ask questions using these phrases. He'll throw a ge in there. Is there no way you could help me? And he does this stuff like, is there no way you could trade this with me? And that's how Raven often tricks people. So you gotta work on your grammar, or else Raven's gonna take everything from you. It's like, I guess so.
Like in the prior story where it wasn't Raven saying like, wasa ushka,
Yeah, it was.
and it's translated like, what should I do?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a negative.
Well, so there's another, like if we look at, I know we're coming up on time, but here's another example where he does something like this. So we've got Yéil Ḳutlaakw, and he says, Wasa ush khwasane yutaya nachyan kakashaduk. What could I possibly do to lure, so I could lure this king salmon over here on the shore? So that ushke, I think you're getting ush plus get. So it's not really a negative, it's just saying like, there's this ush part. If you say like yisiku ush is if you only knew.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's like,
shortened.
what could I, and when you put it in this way, it's like, what could I possibly do? And so in that case, he's like, what on earth am I gonna do now? So Raven has just really interesting ways of talking.
Something I really appreciate about what's that doing stuff? Susie James.
Kaasgéiy.
Kaasgéiy and Kaasgéiy is how they pronounce their pinched L's and underlying X's. And other female speakers, I do feel like it is markedly different and notably different than how male speakers pronounce it.
Right.
And that, as when I started listening as a someone who identifies as female, as a language learner, it was a lot more helpful and made more sense for my mouth to do than trying to imitate even like the very easy sound recordings that you have, let alone like the who does the tapes with Quickney? Help me again.
Ḳutlaakw.
Yeah, Quickney.
In beginning Lingi?
The 76.
Fred White.
Fred White. And so even that's a learner, but you can hear the very different of how he does a pinched L versus how she does a pinched L.
Well, he's a birth speaker from Yakutat. He was just young at that time. And then, yeah, and so different people from different areas, and then also male and female. I do think, you know, some of it you get more of a click in that pinched L, and some of them you get more of a squish in it too. And so it's really interesting to listen to those things. And I think that's why it's important to do a lot of whole language stuff at this level, so that you're just catching these things, and then you're sort of making the decision about how you're going to do them.
Yeah, and like both of the female speakers, their underlying X's are so much in a way softer, like their gutturals are so much softer.
Because a lot of times when we're teaching how to make the sounds, we're overemphasizing everything. But that's because it's easier to overdo it and pull it back than to underdo it and then pull it off, I think. So yeah, tone and underlines and stuff, we tend to really
But
overdo.
like listening to like Anash Nahash, like his gutturals are very like, I can hear it, like I know when I'm hearing it, like spelling for him like is
Right.
a lot easier. And so I do think there's a lot of value in listening to the different genders of the verb speakers.
Yeah. Well. Come back Tuesday with 4 sentences that have some sort of sequence. Tell us something. Gilchishuhan, Wukecha.
Sheesh.
Klein Gunashchish.
Echawe.
Sheesh. Sheesh.
Chish.
Sheesh.